Anoka is a simple high school student and feels far from being cool, rich, or smart. Because of that, he always thinks it's impossible for anyone to like him. His life goes on just like that, monotonous, without any significant surprises. However, suddenly, everything changes when he gets involved in mysterious things like magic and monsters. Unexpectedly, Anoka gets a rare chance to get close to Ayaka, the most popular girl in school, who also happens to be the principal's daughter. A fantasy he never imagined now seems to be inching closer to reality. Although they sit next to each other in class and often take the same bus, Anoka and Ayaka hardly ever speak. It's as if they live in two different worlds. Ayaka stands out so much, while Anoka often feels nearly invisible. One day, when Anoka accidentally drops his eraser, Ayaka kindly picks it up. But who would have thought that Ayaka's kindness would spark the anger of her fans? They drag Anoka out of the classroom, shove him, and warn him not to accept Ayaka's kindness again. After that incident, Anoka heads to the teacher's office to complete his assignment. However, another girl approaches him and takes the paper from his hand. It turns out she's a member of Ayaka's fan group, wanting to ensure that Anoka doesn't get close to Ayaka anymore. Although this story seems like the beginning of a school romance, the reality is different. Anoka's school days are more like the journey of a supporting character in Ayaka's story, while he continues to try to find his own place amidst the chaos of school life that never fully favors him. One day after class, Anoka stepped outside to throw out some trash, lost in thought about the meaning of his life. Among the pile of garbage, he noticed a strange and slightly creepy rabbit toy. Curious, he approached the toy and discovered a note inside. Its contents were odd, a prediction of sunny weather but with a warning that some buildings at school might collapse. At first, Anoka thought it was just a cheap joke, but not long after, he was shocked to see a large shadow appear near the clock tower, which suddenly did collapse. At that moment, Anoka wondered if this was a sign he was about to be transported to another world. However, just as the building seemed to be falling directly above him, Anoka found himself in Ayaka's arms, who somehow was dressed in a witch's costume. Ayaka urgently warned him not to move, as they were both flying on a broom, hovering in midair. From afar, Anoka saw a girl with cat ears watching them. She looked suspicious, as if Ayaka were a dangerous witch. Without hesitation, the girl summoned two giant rabbit toy soldiers to attack them. Ayaka quickly tossed Anoka into the air to avoid the attack, cast a fire spell that immediately burned the toy soldiers, and then gracefully caught Anoka again. However, the rabbit toy soldiers rose again, attacking with swords. Ayaka didn't stay idle and fired a fireball, then skillfully fought using her broom and magic. While Ayaka told Anoka to stay close, he instead started walking away. He saw the girl with cat ears waving from behind a building, signaling for him to come to her for safety. Thinking she was Ayaka's friend, he immediately ran toward her. Unfortunately, Anoka ended up trapped in the middle of the toy soldier army. They quickly captured him, and one soldier with a large axe approached, ready to strike. In that moment, he felt like a useless side character. But before it was too late, Ayaka arrived, unleashing a fiery attack that burned the toy soldiers and saved him, like a true hero. Still convinced that all of this is just a dream, Anoka tries to act cool, telling Ayaka that she looks beautiful even in his dream. Ayaka assures him that she's here to protect him. When Anoka, confused, asks her why, she simply replies, "Because I am your servant." This revelation leaves Anoka bewildered, but Ayaka teases him, affirming that they are in a world that only recognizes two genders. While trying to protect Anoka, Ayaka seems unaware that part of her hair is burning. Anoka feels guilty, thinking that all of this is his fault. He believes he might just be a burden to her. However, in the midst of his confusion, he realizes that, without noticing, he's starting to admire Ayaka. As Anoka ponders all of this, one of the toy soldiers rises again and attacks Ayaka from behind. Reflexively, Anoka jumps in front of her, hoping to look cool. But in reality, he ends up looking a bit silly and gets thrown against the wall. Even so, to Anoka, this moment feels like an unforgettable adventure that makes him feel a bit more alive. However, before he can say a word, he faints. Ayaka sees him injured and approaches, giving him a gentle, caring hug. In her heart, she understands why her hero suddenly collapsed. Ayaka is clearly angry seeing him hurt. She regrets not completely incinerating the toy soldiers from the start. With firm resolve, Ayaka stands up, chanting her ultimate spell, a million clovers, and with a massive burst of fire, all the enemies are instantly destroyed. As evening arrives, Anoka wakes up in Ayaka's private room at school. Ayaka calms him, assuring him that this isn't a dream and promises to explain everything another time. They walk home together, and Ayaka says that, for now, all he needs to know is that she has a duty to protect him because he is her master. Confused, Anoka just walks beside her in silence, without saying much. A few days after that incident, everything seemed to return to normal. However, something felt different. Anoka began to draw unwanted attention from others. This change became more evident when Ayaka confidently sat next to him on the bus to school. As they walked to class, Anoka could feel sharp glares from some students, making him worry about his safety if he continued to stay close to Ayaka. To avoid trouble, Anoka pretended to have a stomach ache and hurried out, but he ended up getting caught by a group of bullies. They grabbed his shirt collar, reminding him to know his place and preparing to rough him up, but Ayaka arrived just in time. Casually, Ayaka took Anoka's tie, made a ribbon out of it, and threatened to burn anyone who dared to harm him again. During lunch, Ayaka sat next to Anoka, accompanied by some girls from her fan club. Proudly, Ayaka fed Anoka with her own hand, saying that she had prepared the food herself. While he felt happy with the special attention, Anoka still felt uncomfortable sitting among the other girls who were glaring at him with unfriendly eyes. Feeling unwelcome, Anoka eventually stood up and said he would eat alone. He quickly left to escape the tense atmosphere. However, seeing Anoka's actions, Ayaka immediately got angry and set all the other girls' lunches on fire. Meanwhile, Anoka felt guilty for having acted a bit rude to her. He wandered through the yard where the building had once collapsed, noticing that everything looked back to normal, as if no damage had ever occurred. Just as he was about to turn around, the cat-haired girl appeared beside him. She remarked that the collapsed building was only an illusion and hinted that Anoka was nothing but a useless person. Suddenly, the girl approached him while transforming into a full witch with her gear, introducing herself as Tanpopo from the witch's tower. Tanpopo declared her intent to kidnap Anoka and summoned her toy soldier troops. But in that critical moment, Ayaka appeared, stopping Tanpopo's plan. Tanpopo had been waiting for Ayaka and quickly ordered her toy soldiers to attack them. This time, there were far more soldiers, attacking Ayaka from all directions with spears and swords. Amid the chaos, Anoka opened his eyes and saw Ayaka shielding him with her injured body. In awe, Anoka asked if Ayaka was alright, unable to believe how she was still holding on. Feeling weak and guilty, Anoka expressed his sorrow and promised to always trust Ayaka. He suggested calling an ambulance, but Ayaka casually reminded him that she was made of fire and told him to close his eyes. With her magic, Ayaka destroyed the toy soldiers with her fire spell. Then Ayaka approached Tanpopo while carrying Anoka like a princess. Firmly, Ayaka threatened Tanpopo, saying she would roast the girl's furry behind with her powerful fire spell. Tanpopo managed to summon her remaining soldiers for protection and escape, narrowly avoiding getting scorched on her way out. Once the battle was over, Ayaka told Anoka to open his eyes. To his surprise, everything around them was clean and back to normal, with no sign of damage. Finally, they walked home together, ending the long and eventful day. The next morning, 5 new students appeared at school, and it turned out they were Tanpopo along with her fellow witches from the witch's tower. A few days passed, and Anoka kept thinking about everything that had happened the day before and why he had become Tanpopo and her group's target. One morning, Anoka decided not to give up and planned to keep questioning Ayaka until he got an answer. However, that day Ayaka didn't take the same bus with him, so Anoka arrived at school alone. As he entered the building and walked to class, he was surprised to see Ayaka seemingly involved in a serious conversation with the new students. Confused, Anoka looked at the class board and realized that Ayaka had joined a rather odd club, the Torture Society Club. Instead of being confused about why the school had such a club, Anoka immediately asked Ayaka how and why she was there. Ayaka revealed that she had enchanted Anoka without him realizing it, making him walk toward the club instead of their usual classroom, all so they could meet. Ayaka then turned toward the girls tied up in the room and declared that this was a witch hunt. She added that these witches needed to be removed because they could pose a threat. Seeing the witches struggling for their lives, Anoka asked Ayaka to remove the bindings on their mouths so they could speak. Ayaka eventually agreed. Tanpopo, one of the bound witches, immediately said they were after Anoka because of the light within him, causing Anoka to blush, unsure of what she meant. Ayaka calmly reminded him not to trust the enemy's words so easily. At that moment, Tanpopo mentioned they still hadn't captured their final member. Then, drops of thick black slime suddenly fell from the ceiling, covering the room and startling Anoka and Ayaka. From within the slime, May, another witch, emerged, arriving to rescue her friends. Quickly, May kidnapped Anoka and took him to the room below, leaving Ayaka to face the other witches. Meanwhile, May looked proud of her success in capturing Anoka. However, May forgot that she was more suited to being a minor comedian than the main antagonist. Ayaka eventually broke through the floor and approached May, who was still holding Anoka as a hostage. May threatened that if Ayaka got any closer, she would let her pet wolf bite Anoka's neck. Instead of being scared, Ayaka kept advancing and attacked May with fire. Anoka fell, and Ayaka was finally able to get him back. Strangely, even though the wolf had briefly bitten Anoka, there was no wound on his neck. Seeing Ayaka, who was injured but remained calm, May finally chose to retreat, leaving Ayaka and Anoka in a silence filled with victory. That afternoon, Anoka opened his eyes in Ayaka's schoolroom. He was surprised to see Ayaka wearing a scarf around her neck despite the scorching heat. Feeling guilty, Ayaka apologized and explained that she only wanted Anoka to live a normal and peaceful life. But with the current situation, it seemed like that would remain a dream unless they did something about it. Ayaka suggested that in order to reclaim that normal life, they would have to take matters into their own hands and defeat the mastermind behind this chaos. The problem was, Ayaka didn't even know who was truly pulling the strings. Listening to Ayaka's explanation, Anoka pondered and felt bad seeing Ayaka hurt. With determination, he asked Ayaka to tell him everything and make him her student. He didn't want Ayaka to fight alone anymore. Elsewhere, Ayaka's mother and the school principal, Kazan, was relaxing at a coffee shop, meeting her old enemy, Crenoir. After 130 years, Crenoir told her that she had found Medusa and her students fighting with her subordinates. Crenoir even teased Kazan to join in the fun. The weekend arrived, and Anoka received a call from Ayaka to meet her outside. Anoka suspected it might be some kind of date, or at least, a moment when Ayaka would reveal everything about the world of witches that she had kept hidden. They decided to head toward the school, but on the way, Ayaka began explaining the world of witches. There were two types of witches, workshop witches and tower witches. Workshop witches were responsible for maintaining peace in the world, setting up workshops in various places to protect people. They stayed there to ensure that magic wasn't misused. On the other hand, tower witches were more selfish, only thinking of their own gain, and often harming others. Ayaka warned that if Anoka fell into their hands, the world would be thrown into chaos, and everyone could be in danger. After chatting, they headed to a shopping center to buy some clothes. While Anoka waited for Ayaka to finish shopping, he noticed a beautiful girl helping a lost child. The girl approached, looked at Anoka while glancing at a note, and suddenly kicked the child like an NPC in a game. She then leaped toward Anoka with a sword, revealing herself as a tower witch. Ayaka quickly arrived to help, setting her opponent ablaze as she leaped forward to protect Anoka. One of the tower witches attacked with an American-style weapon, but Ayaka used a protective cloak to block all the bullets. She then unleashed a fiery gun attack that left her opponents sprawled out. After the fight, they continued their journey toward the school. There, Ayaka took Anoka to the principal's office and introduced him to her mother, Kazan. Kazan seemed annoyed to see Ayaka causing trouble at the shopping center, but she then explained to Anoka that this was simply part of the workshop witch tradition. With a confident smile, Kazan promised to protect Anoka and ensure he was ready for the unpredictable world of magic. The next day, Ayaka invited Anoka out for some training. On their way, they were suddenly confronted by Tanpopo and her rocket team. Ayaka calmly asked if they really thought attacking her was a good idea, given her near-invincible strength. However, Tanpopo seemed determined and charged forward without a plan. Telling Anoka to watch closely, Ayaka easily threw them aside, sending the attackers flying like characters drifting in the air. Unfortunately, Anoka didn't learn much from the encounter. After the incident, they returned to school. When Anoka opened his locker, he found it filled with threatening letters and a rather creepy voodoo doll of himself. Ayaka reassured him, saying it was likely the work of her jealous admirers. Even so, Anoka felt uneasy as they walked home together. After school, Anoka prepared for magic training, but Ayaka suggested they take the bus home and take a break. On the bus, a magical fish suddenly appeared, shimmering in front of them, and on the destination screen, the words "next magical bus stop" appeared. Anoka laughed, not expecting the trip home to be so entertaining. However, the mood quickly turned tense when they encountered Crenoir. Casually, Crenoir stabbed Anoka in the stomach. Strangely, Anoka felt no pain or injury. At that moment, Ayaka suddenly felt a sharp pain similar to a stab in her stomach. Crenoir explained that due to their contract, Ayaka automatically received any injuries that were meant for Anoka. In this situation, Crenoir offered Anoka a magical candy that could awaken his powers. With a little tease, Crenoir even stole Anoka's first kiss, triggering a burst of green fire that made Crenoir step back for a moment. Ayaka then transformed into a stronger version of herself, emitting an intense heat aura that instantly overwhelmed Crenoir. In a brief battle, Ayaka managed to defeat Crenoir, who retreated with injuries. After everything ended, Anoka woke up first, finding Ayaka injured but beginning to recover. Carefully, Anoka took Ayaka to the hospital. There, the nurse confirmed that Ayaka was only exhausted and would wake up soon. Anoka felt relieved, realizing their journey would be filled with challenges, yet he was determined to stay by Ayaka's side every step of the way. Back at home, Anoka noticed a wrapped candy in his pocket. It was the magical orb that Crenoir had tried to give him earlier. Without telling Ayaka, Anoka hid it in his drawer, thinking it might be useful someday. He also started rethinking the contract Crenoir mentioned between him and Ayaka, wondering if they might have known each other before meeting at school. The next day, Ayaka rented out the entire gymnasium for their training. Ayaka gave Anoka his own wizard uniform and began explaining its unique features. When Ayaka asked him to try jumping high, Anoka was immediately shocked to feel his body become light, allowing him to jump almost to the gym's roof. As he came down, Ayaka caught him princess style, then asked him to try lifting her in the same way. Surprised, Anoka realized Ayaka also felt very light thanks to the cloak. Next, Ayaka extended her right hand forward, twisting her wrist, and magically a broom materialized in her hand. Ayaka explained that the broom was actually stored in their cloak and could be summoned with a specific motion. Anoka tried to mimic the movement, but the broom didn't appear, leaving him a bit disappointed. At that moment, Ayaka's phone alarm sounded, signaling the end of their training session. Suddenly, several other students entered the gymnasium for their own practice. Anoka began to panic, worried they'd be seen in these strange outfits. However, Ayaka reassured him, explaining that their cloaks had a special power that made them unnoticeable to others. As they walked outside, Ayaka suddenly asked Anoka if he was afraid of heights. Before Anoka could respond, Ayaka lifted him, mounted her broom, and took them soaring high into the sky. Ayaka told Anoka that they would keep practicing flying until he could summon his own broom. She also explained that there were usually patrol witches in the area to ensure safety. After flying for a while, Ayaka even fell asleep briefly before eventually flying them back to the school. On the way, Anoka saw a young child being harassed and robbed. Anoka asked Ayaka to go down and help, but Ayaka only replied that it was the police's job. As witches, their duty was to protect the city from magical threats, not to intervene in ordinary people's affairs. Anoka wasn't satisfied with that explanation. Bravely, he tried to summon his broom and jumped down to rescue the child. After landing safely, Anoka struck the bullies, knocking them down. However, they quickly got back up and began attacking him. Luckily, Ayaka arrived just in time and drove the bullies away with her magic, making them flee.
When Honoka asked about the rule against attacking civilians, Ayaka explained that because the troublemakers were witches, they could still see Honoka even if he wore a magic cloak. It turned out the child who got robbed was Cassie, a friend of Honoka's older sister at the same school. Cassie wasn't a witch, so she didn't notice the magic happening in front of her. In the city of Rothenburg, Medusa, who was under strict surveillance, managed to escape from prison. Somehow, Medusa broke the seal and fled, deciding to meet her students, the Tanpopo rocket team. But before that, Tanpopo and her gang were seen sitting at a restaurant, planning to capture Honoka and defeat Ayaka. The situation was difficult because Honoka was nearly unbeatable and Ayaka was always surrounded by pheromones that made Honoka faithfully follow her. While discussing, Rin suggested they stop attacking Ayaka and wait for a chance when Ayaka was alone. They agreed with this plan, but shortly after, Chronoir approached and expressed her interest in joining their mission. The next morning, Honoka woke up, got ready for school, and met his older sister Kasumi, who deftly helped tidy his hair. While combing Honoka's hair, Kasumi asked about the phone call from a girl that Honoka received last weekend. Not wanting Kasumi to know that the most popular girl in his school had called him, Honoka decided to lie and say it was just a classmate. Kasumi questioned why Honoka rushed out after the call, making him nervous. Honoka tried to come up with another excuse, but Kasumi warned him to be careful not to damage his hair with the dryer. Then, Kasumi calmly admitted that she knew Honoka met with Ayaka and heard rumors at their school. Kasumi also shared how she often got teased because Honoka had stolen the princess's attention. Kasumi asked about their relationship, but before Honoka could answer, their mother called them for breakfast. With a smile, Kasumi said they would talk again later. At the bus stop, Ayaka was waiting for Honoka, but suddenly she was ambushed by 3 witches from the Tanpopo gang. After breakfast, Honoka suddenly remembered that he had promised to meet Ayaka and rushed to the bus stop. On the way, Honoka stumbled into a trap set by Tanpopo using toy bunny soldiers. They caught Honoka, knocking him to the ground while Tanpopo, with a sly grin, told him that her friends were currently attacking Ayaka. It turned out that Chronoir had revealed Ayaka's weakness to them. If Ayaka was separated from Honoka, her power would decrease. Just then, 2 bunny soldiers were sent flying into the air by a giant foot. Tanpopo was confused until she looked up and saw a giant toy bear holding the soldiers in its hand. It was Kasumi's doing, who turned out to be a workshop witch as well. Tanpopo was annoyed because her smooth plan was now disrupted. Angrily, Tanpopo summoned her giant bunny soldier, and a massive battle began between the giant bunny and the giant bear. In the midst of this colossal fight, Kasumi's giant bear had the upper hand at first, but Tanpopo's bunny didn't back down. With its charming puppy eyes, Tanpopo's bunny attacked its opponent with a dazzling eye technique. The battle grew even more intense, full of wrestling moves, slams, and throws. The bear tried to pin the bunny to the ground, but the bunny bounced back with spiked gloves and released toxic gas, making the battlefield even more chaotic. Finally, both titans landed their left punches, but Kasumi's bear managed to strike first, sending Tanpopo's bunny crashing to the ground. But suddenly, a skeletal T-Rex appeared and attacked the bear. Kasumi turned, shocked to see the unexpected creature, and quickly realized it was Rin's doing with her undead pet. Cunningly, Tanpopo and Rin began to encircle Kasumi, ready for a 2-on-1 fight. However, Kasumi had a secret trick. With a swift move, Kasumi made her bear grow into an even bigger giant, then unleashed an attack that crushed both the bunny and the skeletal T-Rex under its feet as if they were just toys. Kasumi approached Honoka, and Honoka asked what was really happening. But Kasumi just smiled and asked in return who had secretly been protecting him when Ayaka, the princess, wasn't by his side. After hearing that, Honoka enthusiastically grabbed Kasumi's hand, urging her to go save Ayaka immediately. But Kasumi refused, reminding him that Ayaka, with her immense power, didn't need saving. In fact, it might be Ayaka who needed to save others. Kasumi pointed toward Ayaka, who was sitting calmly at the bear's feet, enjoying her book as if nothing had happened. As soon as she got down, Honoka ran up to her, thanking her for protecting him from the witches. But Kasumi quickly interrupted, suggesting that Honoka should be more grateful to her, since they had agreed that Ayaka only protected him during holidays and weekends. While Kasumi Kasumi looked after Honoka on the bus and at school. It was revealed that Kasumi had lied a bit earlier that morning about not knowing Ayaka and feeling annoyed. Kasumi teased him, saying that it was her duty as his older sister. Kasumi also told Ayaka that the principal had mentioned there were more than 30 tower witches in the city who had not yet made a move, signaling that something big might be happening, and they needed to stay alert. While they were talking, Kazane turned on the TV and saw a report of significant damage in the city due to the fight with Tanpopo. Kazane sighed, worried about how much it would cost to fix everything. Elsewhere, Ayaka suggested that they stay together all the time to protect Honoka. Meanwhile, Chronowire was putting together a plan and ordered her pet crocodile to capture all the tower witches in the city and bring them to her hideout. At the same time, Kasumi received a call from Rothenburg, informing her about Medusa's escape. The next day, Ayaka met Honoka's mother, Komachi, and asked if she could look after Honoka all the time. Surprisingly, Komachi agreed right away and began sharing stories about her youth. Komachi told a story about how she used to be close friends with a powerful girl named Gigi Dragon, who turned out to be Ayaka's mother, Kazane. They were so close that they promised to marry each other, but since it wasn't the year 2023 back then, they had to marry men and agreed to match their children. So it turned out Ayaka and Honoka were already engaged before they were even born. Hearing all that, Kasumi immediately refused to let it happen. Komachi tried to advise her to be mature and stop trying to do everything for him all day long. But Kasumi remained firm, insisting it was her right as his older sister. When all of Komachi's efforts seemed to be in vain, Komachi pushed Kasumi to the ground, trying to restrain her, and ordered Honoka to pack his things and run away immediately. After that, the two of them stepped outside, and Ayaka gently asked Honoka if Kasumi would be okay staying alone. With confidence, Honoka replied that there isn't a man in the world who wouldn't want to live with her. Ayaka then expressed her belief that there was someone with great power close to them who had arranged their current situation. Everything seemed to have been carefully planned. Shortly after, a car arrived, and the driver opened the door for them. Honoka began to realize that being the principal's daughter meant living a life of luxury. As soon as they arrived at the towering mansion, they were greeted by many servants ready to serve. Ayaka told Honoka that his room was on one of the upper floors, so they took the elevator. During the ride, Honoka couldn't stop wondering who else lived in the 41-story house. When they reached Ayaka's room, they found 3 maids waiting, already turned to stone, with Medusa standing behind them, looking very impatient. Ayaka quickly ordered Honoka to stay on the 12th floor and closed the elevator door behind him. Soon after, Ayaka transformed into her fiery witch battle form, ready to engage in a fierce fight against the snake woman. Meanwhile, outside the door, Honoka pondered why Ayaka told him to stay far away when in the past Ayaka always wanted him close. Honoka speculated that it might be because the enemy was very strong, thinking that if Honoka were too close, Ayaka might lose her invulnerability. With determination, Honoka decided to do his best, not following orders, and thought of himself like Batman. Suddenly, the elevator door melted, and Ayaka fell to the floor. Ayaka ordered Honoka to grab a broom and run away, reminding him that during the fight, Ayaka was just cannon fodder that could add to the damage. However, Medusa had other plans and used her curse to turn Ayaka into stone. Desperately, Honoka begged Medusa to release Ayaka and promised to do anything she asked. But Medusa refused the offer, saying that she wasn't that foolish. Honoka remembered the candy he had, a small object they took when they decided to live together. Honoka quickly pulled it out, swallowed it, and broke the seal, causing the white substance inside to pour out. Suddenly, a beautiful woman with white hair like a vampire appeared in the room and introduced herself as the White Princess Evermillion. Medusa immediately attacked Evermillion, but Evermillion retaliated by destroying her, sending her flying out of the building and shattering part of the window, as if releasing the weight after a hard day's work. As the million-dollar empire crumbled to pieces, Kazane began to suspect Medusa's involvement. Kazane quickly contacted her assistant and gave instructions to gather all the witches in town to hunt down the snake. On the other side, Evermillion told Honoka that Ayaka had turned to stone because she didn't believe in her own power. To break the curse, Honoka had to reaffirm his trust and feelings for Ayaka. In simpler terms, Honoka needed to kiss her, like Snow White waking from her slumber. After delivering this message, Evermillion disappeared, suggesting that Honoka stay safe so he wouldn't have to call on her too often. Just then, Medusa returned, this time accompanied by her students known as the Tanpopo rocket team. Honoka quickly kissed Ayaka, and instantly the stone seal shattered, freeing Ayaka to join him in the battle against Medusa. The two of them fought together, like relentless cockroaches, facing every obstacle that came their way. Ayaka easily crushed the rocket team with a single blow, then switched to a one-on-one fight with Medusa. The two witches fought intensely, and even though Medusa tried to turn Ayaka to stone again, Ayaka managed to break through the attack with the combined power of firearms, love, and a conspiracy shield. That night, Honoka woke up in the school infirmary and saw Ayaka sitting beside him. Anxiously, Honoka asked if it had all been a bad dream, but Ayaka confirmed that everything that happened was real. Ayaka then pulled back the curtain, revealing Medusa and her students resting in beds next to them. Honoka began to panic, but Ayaka assured him that they wouldn't attack again. After that, Ayaka closed the curtain, kissed him, and mentioned that she had fun last night too. Then, the two of them decided to return to Honoka's house since Ayaka's place was in complete chaos. Meanwhile, Kasumi went out at night to respond to Kazan's call. At Honoka's house, Ayaka and Honoka finally met his mother. The next morning, Kasumi returned home after an all-night search for Medusa, but unfortunately the mission failed. Kasumi decided to visit Honoka's room and found Ayaka sitting on his bed checking the seal. Kasumi was annoyed after learning that her mother allowed Ayaka to stay with them, and she started making rude comments at the breakfast table. Komachi couldn't handle the situation and felt depressed. Honoka scolded Kasumi, calling her a bad child. Unfortunately, it was already too late. Komachi rolled over in her bed, refusing to speak to anyone. Honoka then told Kasumi to call her workplace, informing them that Komachi was sick and couldn't come in, and then he headed off to school. At school, the student council and Ayaka's simp club held a meeting. Their president seemed frustrated. It had been 2 weeks since Honoka got close to Ayaka, and no one had taken any action. The president turned to the vice president, who was also hesitant to intervene, simply telling them to stay calm because Ayaka had clearly stated that she would not tolerate anyone harming Honoka. Frustrated, the president confronted their advisor, the science teacher, Mikage, telling him that they knew Mikage was only an advisor because he couldn't say no. The president expressed dissatisfaction with the lack of action, warning that if Mikage didn't do something about Honoka, both Mikage and the student council would face the consequences. That morning, Mikage approached Ayaka and Honoka, telling them there was something important to discuss. Mikage brought them to the science lab and went straight to explaining the problem. Mikage revealed that he was the advisor to the student council and expressed his concern that Honoka seemed to be causing trouble for him. Mikage speculated that since Honoka transferred here in the second year of high school, he might not fully understand how Ayaka behaved in her first year. Mikage then continued by explaining a school tradition that took place during the Autumn Cultural Festival. In this event, all the students vote and decide who deserves to be their role model, known as the prince or princess. Candidates are selected based on various criteria, including appearance, grades, athletic achievements, charisma, and the demi-mom factor. Problems began to arise when rumors about the chosen student started spreading, especially if a boy was involved. Honoka tried to defend Ayaka's reputation, but Mikage dismissed his arguments, emphasizing that Ayaka belonged to the school, not to him. Mikage asked Honoka to stay away from Ayaka. Saddened, Honoka reflected on the situation, but Ayaka encouraged him not to look too desperate. Ayaka explained that this tradition came from a legend about a fairy who descended from heaven to attend school with ordinary people, making the princess a high figure in the eyes of the students. Mikage affirmed to Honoka the school's hierarchy: the principal, the princess, the student council, the teachers, and the ordinary students in descending order. As the principal's princess, Ayaka already held the top 2 powerful roles. However, the challenge lay in the consequences Mikage might face if he did not comply with the student council. Ayaka reassured him by stating that she had a plan, and they needed to act on it quickly. Mikage felt relieved by Ayaka's assurance and shifted to more pressing matters. Using a magical tool, Mikage transported Honoka and himself to another dimension. Mikage handed Honoka a small ball resembling the magical candy that Cronoir had given him, explaining that it was a lower-tier copy. Honoka was puzzled about how Mikage knew about the candy since he hadn't shared this information with anyone except Ayaka. Mikage revealed that they were there because Honoka had used one of those candies to summon the white princess sealed within him. Mikage explained that there were a total of 5 seals, and one of them had already broken. This made him worry that the principal would soon become his enemy. Mikage disclosed that the workshop headquarters entrusted this to him because he was a very powerful mage, and thanks to his strength, he could live freely. But all of this was on the condition that the 5 seals remained intact. Now that one of them had shattered, Mikage felt the other seals would start crumbling one by one, and there was no way to stop it. The only solution, in his opinion, was to seal Honoka with the magic school's principal. Fortunately, the principal was currently busy dealing with Medusa and was unaware of the seal's existence. However, it was only a matter of time before Mikage discovered them, including the fact that they were hiding Medusa. Mikage emphasized that he only wanted to help Honoka, and if it weren't for the princess, he would gladly be his guardian. Mikage then offered Honoka the choice to leave Ayaka and go with him. However, Honoka did not even think twice about the offer. At that moment, Ayaka broke through the dimensional barrier, attacking Mikage directly and pinning him to the ground before taking Honoka away. Nevertheless, Mikage managed to survive by using a substitution jutsu and escaped. Afterwards, Ayaka led Honoka to the speaker's room and asked him to announce to all the students to gather in the gym. Once everyone was assembled, Ayaka stepped onto the stage, and for the first time in DOA history, Ayaka showed an interest in school politics. With great enthusiasm, Ayaka began delivering a captivating speech about her concern for the school's future. Ayaka even went so far as to strip the student council president of their position and immediately appointed Honoka as her chosen candidate for the new president. Not stopping there, Ayaka also took on the role of vice president herself, creating a new structure for the positions of vice president and vice president. After that, it was Honoka's turn to give an introductory speech to the student council committee. Honoka acknowledged that he knew not everyone liked him at the moment, but he was determined to prove his worth and work hard to earn everyone's acceptance. Meanwhile, Kasumi, who felt uncomfortable with Ayaka's dominance over her brother, decided to take action in a rather forceful way. Kasumi set up a complex trap and followed them after school, managing to catch them as they entered a toy store. When Honoka went out alone to take a break, Kasumi saw her chance and kidnapped him using her bear. Kasumi threw a car at Ayaka, and with a few injections, successfully put Ayaka to sleep. Then, Kasumi activated airplane mode on the bear, which was created by dismantling half of their house, and announced their plan to escape to the forest and live happily on their own. Kasumi mentioned that she had overheard the teacher talking to Honoka about the principal becoming his enemy, and Kasumi anticipated that his daughter would become his enemy too. However, their plan was interrupted when they saw a huge shadow appear above their heads. They looked up and were shocked to see a dragon flying overhead, ridden by the Princess of Fire herself. Ayaka, with a commanding presence, began firing fire spells from above. Kasumi tried to dodge the attacks but ended up accidentally destroying half the city. Eventually, they crashed into a building and everyone fell. Quickly, Ayaka jumped down and saved them all by catching them before they could hit the ground. After that, Ayaka took them home and put them to bed. That night, Honoka woke up and apologized to Ayaka for his sister's actions. However, Ayaka kindly reassured him that she didn't mind. Ayaka admitted that Kasumi had only thrown a car at her and put her to sleep with a few funny remarks. In fact, Ayaka admired Kasumi for being such a protective older sister. Jokingly, Ayaka wondered if she should act like his younger sister too. Honoka replied that, if anything, Ayaka would be his older sister. They spent the whole night joking around, exploring this new dynamic. Finally, when Ayaka started to feel bored, she fell asleep. Honoka let her rest in his bed. That night, Honoka woke up and apologized to Ayaka for his sister's actions. However, Ayaka kindly reassured him that she didn't mind. Ayaka admitted that Kasumi had only thrown a car at her and put her to sleep with a few funny remarks. In fact, Ayaka admired Kasumi for being such a protective older sister. Jokingly, Ayaka wondered if she should act like his younger sister too. Honoka replied that, if anything, Ayaka would be his older sister. They spent the whole night joking around, exploring this new dynamic. Finally, when Ayaka started to feel bored, she fell asleep. Honoka let her rest in his bed.